So now I have my little pieces laid out on the charcoal block, and I'm going to anneal them. Now I see that this one isn't laying quite on a flat spot. Everything else is fairly flat. As your argentium anneals, you will see it go from a shiny silver to a white matte color. That's the germanium oxide coming to the surface. And it's annealed. Let that cool, and then we will put back on our piece. We will flux it, and then we will put it back on our piece, and we will fuse the entire thing. So now I've fluxed the base. I'm going to find the flattest spot on my block. And now I'm going to lay out my pieces, starting with the smallest half round. Then the next. Now I'm going to flux, or excuse me, I'm going to wick away as I go. Next, we'll put the big petals on. Now our half petals. And once you have all your pieces on there, take a very, very, very good look to make sure they're positioned exactly the way you want them. Make sure that you wick away as much of it as you can. And if you need to steady your hand to do that so that you don't move everything, you'll see that I'm steadying my hand with my other one. Then look at the composition as a whole to make sure that it looks exactly the way that you want it to look. And once you have that, it's time to light the torch and fuse to the back plate. Begin to circle the piece from the outside. That way it will kind of heat everything around it and it will begin to dry the flux. Remember that very first stage is the white puffy stage. Hopefully we've wicked away enough of it that it's not going to force our pieces out of alignment. And that looks good. Nothing has moved. I'm basically just following the outer rim, going in an oval pattern. That will completely encompass the entire piece. It will get the inside, it will heat the outside. And once the dirty flux has gone away, I'll move and I will focus specifically on the inside. There's the dirty flux. Now I do notice that one of my pieces did move. Just a little bit. Because this is quite a bit of bulk of silver, it is going to take it longer to fuse, heat up, and then fuse. This is going to fuse beautifully because it's argentium. If we were using sterling, it would be incredibly challenging to try and solder each of those little pieces down. And you can see that the dirty flux is starting to go away a little at a time. It takes a lot of heat to heat this much metal, but you can see that the dirty flux is starting to go away. I don't want you to get impatient. Sometimes students think that something's wrong because it's not moving faster. I don't want you to think that. I just want you to be patient and work through the stages. You can see that our flame is wanting to get that dark orange, bright orange. It's not quite there yet, but almost. There it goes. It's really orange now. The dirty flux is almost gone. Now I'm going to focus mainly on that flower. Now I can see the tiny little micro droplets, they're starting to form. So I have all my granulation on here, and I realized for whatever reason my video kept shutting off earlier. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what I have and why I have it. So we started out putting the number 3s roughly associated with where the petals come in. Then we put a number 2 on each side, and then we filled in with the number 1s. Now between the number 2s, I believe I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I have 6 in between each number 2. I have 6 number 1s in between each number 2. Now I just wanted it to look a little bit more even. If we had left it strictly where that recesses, then it would have looked a little uneven. But it still roughly coincides, and I think it's going to look wonderful. Now, I had cut little pieces to go right here to replicate a portion of another petal. I did not like that, so I just carried my number 1s all the way down and stopped them there. For my center, I've actually got 6 of the number 1s. Your number may differ, or you may choose to put one large ball there. You could actually go beyond 7 and make it even larger if you wanted to, but let me caution you, even though it may look small, it is going to be very dense, and it's going to take a lot of heat to fuse that larger ball. On the full petals, I put a number 5, 2 number 3s, and then 5 number 1s. Now I let this dry overnight because I was at the end of the day when I finished putting these on. If you let your flux dry, that can be a good thing if you have wicked it away thoroughly, because the granules will dry in place. And I just noticed that I had a little tiny gap between 2 of them, so that wasn't acceptable. So I wanted to move it, which is now going to re-wet my flux. That's okay, because I don't want to have a gap. So I have 5 on each leg of the number 1s. On the smaller petals, or the partial petals, I have a 5, 2 number 3s, and then 2 number 1s on each leg. And I have replicated that over the entire thing. And now I'm ready to fuse. And I'm going to take just a minute and put my bigger torch tip on, because it's going to take quite a bit of heat. Now, as I said, I have this on a Lazy Susan. I don't know if it's going to work as well. Not a Lazy Susan, but the swivel that makes a Lazy Susan. So I'm actually going to put my larger tip on. I may not need it, but I like to go in hot and fast and not spend a lot of time bringing the piece up to temperature. Now I'm going to keep my tweezers in my hand, and I'm going to watch, because if one of those little balls pops loose and moves, I want to stop immediately, and I want to reposition it. Now you can see how those rose up, but now they're coming back down. And not all of them are coming back down where they should. So I'm going to take just a minute. I'm going to shut my torch off. And I'm going to push these right back where they need to go. There was probably a little bit of flux trapped down on that little end. It probably created a little funnel, and I did not get it wicked away as good as I could have. But if you don't stop and take care of it at this point, you will not be happy with it. I'm wondering if I have one too many. I'm going to take one out. Seems like they may have been in there so tight that when they started to heat and expand, there wasn't room for them. Okay, let's see what we've got. Once they actually get stuck where they're supposed to be, they will stay. So take that as encouragement. Alright, they may be where they're supposed to go. Alright, so I'm going to move this around the entire piece pretty quickly because I want to develop that cone of heat. So we've already gone past the white fluffy stage, and now we've got the dirty flux. I'm going to stop just one more time. I do think I'm going to have room for that other little granule. Yeah. This one is sticking out a little further. I'm dropping a bit of flux on that to wet it, to try and get it to release. And there it goes. I promise the end result will be worth the effort. So the white flux is, or the dirty flux is starting to go away, and now the piece is starting to look clean. I'm starting to see the micro droplets, but when we have wicked away as much flux as we have, sometimes it's hard to see that separate because there's less of it separating. But I do see my metal getting that wet, shiny look. Now remember with the granulation that you don't want to stop too soon, because even though it seems like there's less density there, those balls are quite dense. If one doesn't fuse and it falls off, you can go back in and refuse again, but I absolutely hate to have to do that, so I always like to be very certain when I'm fusing that I am getting them all. And I think I've gotten it good. It's been wet. The balls have gone wet and shiny looking. I do have a little separation right there between the two larger balls and that one. I just didn't notice it. So now this is extremely hot, so I'm just going to let it sit there for a while and cool, and then we will go on to the next step. I will, once it cools, I won't film that part. I'll just quench it and I'll pickle it, and then I'll be back here for the next step.